She was broken, but didn't know she was becoming unbreakable. The journey of a woman who refused to give up. No one noticed the sound her heart made when it broke. It wasn't loud. It didn't echo. It didn't stop the world. It was quiet. So quiet that even the people standing closest to her didn't hear it. She stood in the kitchen, one hand gripping the edge of the counter, the other holding a phone that felt heavier than it should have. The message on the screen hadn't changed, but somehow, every second she stared at it, the words felt sharper. I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. That was it. No explanation. No conversation. No goodbye. Just one sentence that erased 12 years of marriage, 2 children's sense of safety, and every dream she had built her life around. Her name was Amara, and until that moment, she believed endurance was the same thing as strength, a life built on sacrifice. Amara had never been the kind of woman who expected much from life. She grew up learning that love meant compromise, that silence was safer than conflict, and that a woman's worth was measured by how much she could endure without complaining. Her mother used to say, "Strong women don't cry. They carry their pain quietly." And Amara believed her. She married young, not because she was foolish, but because she was hopeful. Because when he smiled at her, she felt chosen. Because when he promised forever, she wanted to believe him. In the early years, she tried to be everything. A supportive wife, a patient listener, a forgiving partner. When money was tight, she cut corners. When he was distant, she blamed herself. When he raised his voice, she lowered hers. She told herself love was supposed to be hard. And if it hurt, that just meant she was trying hard enough. The slow disappearance. Pain didn't arrive all at once. It arrived in pieces. It arrived as missed dinners, as unanswered calls, as nights where he faced the wall instead of her. It arrived as criticism disguised as jokes. You're too sensitive. You're overthinking. You're not the woman you used to be. She believed him. She worked harder, smiled more, asked for less. She stopped talking about her dreams, stopped buying clothes she liked, stopped recognizing the woman in the mirror. One day, she realized she had become invisible inside her own life. And still she stayed. Because leaving felt like failure. Because staying felt familiar. Because she believed if she just loved harder, everything would heal. The moment everything shattered. The message came on a Tuesday. Ordinary. Unremarkable. Cruel in its simplicity. He didn't come home that night. Or the next. Or the next. Bills piled up. Questions from the children multiplied. Silence filled every corner of the house. Amara didn't cry at first. She moved on instinct. She packed lunches, paid what she could, smiled for the kids. But at night, when the house went quiet, the pain arrived like a storm. She cried into pillows so her children wouldn't hear. She begged God for answers she never received. She replayed every conversation, every mistake, every moment she thought she could have saved. That's when the brokenness settled in. Not dramatic, not visible, just heavy, like carrying a weight no one else could see. When the world turns its back, people didn't know what to say. Some stopped calling. Some offered advice she didn't ask for. Some quietly blamed her. If she were stronger. If she had tried harder. If she had been different. She heard it all. And slowly she began to believe it. She felt ashamed for still hurting. Ashamed for still hoping. Ashamed for not bouncing back like everyone expected her to. But broken people don't shatter loudly. They fracture silently. The lowest point. The day the electricity was cut off, something inside her finally gave way. She sat on the floor in the dark, her children asleep beside her. And for the first time, she admitted the truth out loud. I don't know how to survive this. Her hands trembled. Her breath felt shallow. Her faith felt thin. She wasn't thinking about strength. She wasn't thinking about the future. She was just trying to make it through the night. And that's when something unexpected happened. Not a miracle, not a sudden solution, but a thought. A quiet, stubborn thought. If I'm still here, maybe I'm not as weak as I think. She didn't know it then, but that thought was the beginning of her transformation. What she didn't realize, Amara believed she was broken. What she didn't know was that pressure doesn't just destroy. Sometimes, it reshapes. Every tear she cried was carving space for something stronger. Every night she survived was proof she hadn't given up. Every breath she took was resistance. She wasn't healed. She wasn't confident. She wasn't fearless. But she was still standing. And that was enough to begin. The morning came without asking permission. Sunlight slipped through the torn curtain like nothing had happened. Like the world hadn't collapsed the night before. Like she hadn't sat on the floor in darkness wondering how much longer she could keep breathing under the weight of her own life. Amara opened her eyes slowly. Her body ached in places she didn't know pain could settle. Her head felt heavy. Her chest felt tight. But her children were still asleep beside her. Their small breaths rising and falling in a rhythm that reminded her why she was still here. She didn't feel strong. She didn't feel hopeful. But she felt something else. Responsibility. And responsibility, she had learned, could sometimes move mountains when hope could not. The first step no one applauded. There was no dramatic moment where Amara stood in front of a mirror and declared she would rebuild her life. There was no speech. No transformation montage. No sudden confidence. There was only exhaustion. And a quiet decision. I can't stop, she whispered to herself. Even if I don't know where I'm going. That day, she put on her cleanest clothes, tied her hair back, and walked to the nearest employment office with shaking hands and borrowed courage. The building smelled like old paper and disappointment. She waited in line with people who looked just as tired as she felt. People who carried their own invisible battles. When it was her turn, the woman behind the desk barely looked up. Experience, she asked flatly. Amara swallowed. Years of unpaid labor. Years of emotional endurance. Years of holding everything together. None of it fit neatly into a resume. I can work, she said quietly. I learn fast. The woman sighed, handed her a form, and pointed to a chair. It wasn't rejection. But it wasn't kindness either. Still, Amara sat down and filled out the form like it mattered. Because it did. The weight of starting from zero. The first job she got wasn't dignified. It didn't match her dreams or her sacrifices. It paid little, demanded much, and reminded her daily of how far she had fallen. She cleaned offices at night. She scrubbed floors where other people chased careers. She emptied trash cans filled with the remains of lives that felt stable and secure. And every night, when she walked home under flickering streetlights, exhaustion clung to her bones. Some nights she cried. Some nights she didn't feel anything at all. But she kept going. Not because she believed in herself, but because stopping felt more dangerous than continuing. The loneliness of reinvention. No one talks about how lonely rebuilding is. Friends who once called stopped checking in. Conversations became awkward. Invitations faded. She was no longer the happy wife or the dependable one. She was the woman who failed. And failure made people uncomfortable. At work, she kept her head down. She didn't share her story. She didn't complain. She learned the art of invisibility again. But this time it was a choice. At night, when her children were asleep, she sat alone at the small table and stared at her hands. Hands that had held a marriage together. Hands that had comforted children through nightmares. Hands that were now cracked and sore from cleaning chemicals. She wondered if this was all life had left for her. And then she wondered something even more terrifying. What if this is still better than what I had before? The first flicker of self-respect. One evening, as she cleaned an empty office, she noticed a framed quote on the wall. It was simple. You are not behind. You are becoming. She stood there longer than she meant to. The words felt personal. almost intrusive. She thought about everything she had survived. The betrayal, the shame, the fear, the nights she didn't think she would make it through. And for the first time, she didn't see weakness. She saw endurance. Something inside her shifted, not loudly but firmly. Maybe strength wasn't loud confidence. Maybe it was quiet persistence. Maybe it was showing up even when no one was watching. When the past tries to pull you back. Just when she began to find her footing, the past knocked on her door. Literally. He stood there one evening, looking familiar and distant all at once. His voice was softer. His eyes avoided hers. "I just wanted to see the kids," he said. "And talk." Her heart raced. Old habits surged forward. Old fears whispered. Old hopes stirred dangerously. For a moment, she forgot the nights she cried alone. The way he left without explanation. The silence that followed. For a moment, she was the woman who still wanted answers. But then she looked at her children behind her. And she remembered. "I can't do this right now," she said calmly. "You need to call first." He looked surprised. She was surprised too, because for the first time, she didn't feel like she was begging. She was setting a boundary, and that boundary felt like oxygen. The setback that almost broke her again. The job cut her hours. The rent increased. Her savings disappeared faster than she could replenish them. One bad week threatened to undo months of effort. She sat on her bed, staring at unpaid bills, the familiar heaviness returning. Maybe this is where it ends, she thought. She felt foolish for believing she could rise. The doubt was loud. "You're tired. You're alone. You're still broken." But something had changed. She didn't argue with the doubt. She acknowledged it. And then she did something she had never done before. She asked for help. The humility that heals. Asking for help didn't come naturally. It felt like admitting defeat. But she reached out to a local women's support center she had once walked past without noticing. The room was small. The chairs mismatched. The women inside carried stories heavier than hers. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. She listened. She spoke. She cried without apologizing. She learned that strength didn't mean doing everything alone. It meant knowing when you couldn't. What she still didn't know. Amara still thought she was surviving. She didn't know she was rebuilding. Every step she took, however small, was laying a foundation for something greater. She wasn't healed yet. She wasn't confident yet. She wasn't free yet. But she was becoming. And becoming is powerful. Change rarely announces itself. It arrives quietly, disguised as inconvenience, uncertainty, or fear. For Amara, it arrived on a rainy evening, folded into a piece of paper she almost threw away. She had just finished another long shift. Her feet hurt. Her hands smelled of disinfectant. Her mind was already preparing for another sleepless night of numbers and worry. The flyer slipped from her bag as she reached for her keys. Free skills training program for women rebuilding their lives. She stared at it for a long moment. Free usually meant unreliable. Programs like this often promised more than they delivered. And hope. Hope felt dangerous now. Still, she folded the paper carefully and slipped it back into her pocket. She didn't tell herself she would go. She just didn't throw it away. The battle between fear and possibility. The first night of the program, Amara almost didn't show up. Her mind listed every reason not to go. You're too tired. You're not qualified. You'll embarrass yourself. People like you don't get second chances. She stood in front of the mirror, staring at a woman she barely recognized. Dark circles under her eyes. Lines carved by stress and silence. Shoulders permanently tense. Once she had dreamed. Once she had believed she could be more. That woman felt like a stranger now. Still, she picked up her bag and walked out the door. A room full of stories. The classroom was small but bright. Women of all ages sat in uneven rows. Some nervous. Some hopeful. some clearly just as scared as she was. The instructor smiled warmly. "This isn't about perfection," she said. "It's about progress." Something in Amara's chest loosened. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't the odd one out. She was exactly where she belonged. They learned practical skills, computer basics, communication, confidence building. But something else was happening beneath the surface. Each lesson chipped away at the lie that she was incapable. Each small success, sending an email, completing an assignment, felt like reclaiming a piece of herself. She went home tired but lighter, different, the return of an old voice. One evening, as she practiced typing at the library, she felt it. That old, familiar voice inside her. The one that used to say, "You can do this." She paused, fingers hovering over the keyboard. It startled her. She had silenced that voice for years, buried it under compromise and fear, let it fade until she believed it was gone forever. But it wasn't gone. It had been waiting. When confidence attracts attention, her instructor noticed her dedication. "You're quick to learn," she said one day. "Have you ever thought about office administration?" Amara laughed softly. "I clean offices," she replied. "I don't belong in them." The instructor shook her head. "Belonging isn't about where you start. It's about where you're willing to grow." The words stayed with her. A week later, the instructor handed her a referral for an entry-level office position. Amara's hands shook as she held the paper. Opportunity felt terrifying, because opportunity meant she might fail. And failure, after everything she had endured, felt unbearable. The interview that tested everything. The interview room was clean and quiet. The interviewer looked professional, calm, assessing. Amara sat across from her, heart pounding. Questions came. About experience. About skills. About confidence. She answered honestly. She didn't exaggerate. She didn't apologize. She didn't shrink. When asked about gaps in her work history, she paused. "I was building a family," she said. "And then I was rebuilding myself." The room went quiet. The interviewer nodded slowly. "Thank you for your honesty," she said. When Amara walked out, she didn't know if she had the job. But she knew something else. She had shown up as herself. And that mattered. The weight that brought back doubt. Days passed. Then weeks. No call. Old fears resurfaced. "See, you reached too high. People like you don't move forward. Know your place." She felt foolish again. The program ended. Life returned to its grind. She went back to cleaning at night, typing practice during breaks, holding on to fragile hope. And then, the phone rang. The moment everything shifted. "We'd like to offer you the position." For a moment, Amara couldn't speak. Her breath caught. Her vision blurred. "Yes," she finally whispered. "Yes, I can." She hung up the phone and sat in silence. No cheering crowd. No celebration. Just quiet disbelief. She pressed her hand against her chest. This didn't erase her pain, but it changed the direction of her story. The cost of growth. The new job was harder than she expected. She felt slow, insecure, afraid of making mistakes. Some coworkers were kind, some distant, some clearly doubted her. And some days, the weight of expectation felt heavier than the weight of poverty ever had. But she kept showing up. Every day. Even when fear whispered she didn't belong. The woman she met again. One evening, as she locked up her desk, she caught her reflection in the office glass. She stood straighter now. Her eyes held something different. Not happiness. Not confidence. But resilience. She smiled. Not because life was easy, but because she had survived worse. That night, she realized something profound. She wasn't becoming someone new. She was becoming herself again. Growth has a way of inviting old ghosts back into your life. Not to comfort you, but to test whether you've truly changed. For Amara, the test arrived on a quiet afternoon. disguised as a familiar name flashing on her phone. She stared at the screen longer than she should have. Her heart remembered what her mind had worked so hard to forget. There was a time when a message from him meant everything. Now, it felt like a door cracking open to a room she had barely escaped. She let it ring. Then she silenced the phone and slipped it into her bag. But the past is persistent. When the past speaks softly, he found another way. A letter. Handwritten. Apologetic. Carefully worded. He spoke of regret. Of mistakes. Of loneliness. He said he missed the family. Missed her strength. Missed the way she believed in him. He didn't mention the nights she cried alone. The fear he left behind. The wreckage of abandonment. He asked if they could talk. Just talk. Amara folded the letter slowly. Her hands didn't shake this time. But her heart did. The old war inside her. That night, sleep didn't come easily. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying memories she had buried. The laughter. The early days. The promises. And then the betrayal. She felt the familiar pull. The desire to return to what was known, even if it had been painful. Familiar pain feels safer than unknown peace. She understood that now. And understanding didn't make the decision easier. The conversation that mattered most. The next day, she spoke to a woman from the support group. A woman who had walked this road before her. "Do you miss him?" the woman asked gently. Amara thought carefully. "I miss who I thought he was," she said. "But I don't miss who I became with him." The woman nodded. "That's your answer." The meeting that changed everything. Amara agreed to meet him, but on her terms. Public place. Clear boundaries. No expectations. He looked older. Smaller somehow. He talked about his failures. His confusion. His regrets. He asked if there was still a chance. Amara listened quietly. Not with longing. With clarity. "I've forgiven you," she said finally. "But forgiveness doesn't mean returning to what broke me." He looked stunned. She felt free. When guilt tries to disguise itself as love. After the meeting, guilt crept in. Had she been too cold? Too firm? Too changed? Society teaches women to feel responsible for everyone's healing except their own. But she recognized the pattern now. Love that demands self-erasure is not love. The unexpected loss. Just as she found her footing, life struck again. Her mother fell ill. Suddenly, the woman who had taught her to endure pain silently was vulnerable. Amara spent long nights at the hospital, memories resurfacing, old wounds reopening. Caretaker, daughter, provider. The weight returned, and with it, exhaustion. The breaking point that became a breakthrough. One night, sitting beside her mother's bed, Amara felt the tears come again. "I don't know how to do everything," she whispered. Her mother reached for her hand. "You don't have to," she said weakly. "You were never meant to carry it all alone." It was the first time her mother had ever said something like that. And it healed something deep. The redefinition of strength. Amara realized strength was not silence. It was honesty. It was rest. It was choosing herself without apology. She arranged support, delegated care, protected her energy, and the world didn't collapse. Instead, it adjusted. What she understood at last. She had spent years believing strength meant endurance without complaint. Now she knew better. Strength was boundaries. Strength was self-respect. Strength was walking away without hating yourself for it. She wasn't broken. She had been bending. And now she was standing. Healing doesn't arrive all at once. It comes in moments so small you almost miss them. For Amara, it arrived one ordinary morning as she stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her jacket before work. She paused, not because something was wrong, but because something was different. She wasn't bracing herself anymore. She wasn't preparing for disappointment. She was simply present. And that realization caught her off guard. When life stops feeling like a battle, Her days still carried responsibility, work deadlines, children's needs, hospital visits, bills that never fully disappeared. But the constant tension, the feeling that everything might collapse at any second, was gone. She had learned how to steady herself, not by controlling the world, but by trusting herself within it. She no longer woke up asking, "What if I fail?" She woke up asking, "What matters today?" And that question changed everything. The confidence no one gave her. At work, people began to notice. Not because she demanded attention, but because she carried herself differently. She spoke clearly. She asked questions without apology. She stopped shrinking her presence to make others comfortable. One afternoon, her supervisor called her into the office. "We're opening a new position," she said. "More responsibility, more leadership. I think you should apply." Old Amara would have laughed nervously. Old Amara would have said, "I'm not ready." This time she said something else. "I'll think about it." And when she walked out, her heart raced, not with fear, but excitement. The voice that no longer shook. That night she sat alone, the application open on her laptop. Doubt tried one last time. "You've come far enough. Don't risk it. Comfort is safer than growth." She closed her eyes and breathed. Then she remembered the woman who sat in the dark when the lights were cut off. She remembered the exhaustion, the fear, the silence, and she realized something powerful. She had already survived her worst day. Everything else was just growth. She submitted the application. The day she spoke her truth. As part of the interview process, she was asked a question she hadn't expected. "Why do you want this role?" She could have listed skills. She could have talked about experience. Instead, she told the truth. "Because I know what it means to rebuild from nothing," she said. "And I know I bring empathy, resilience, and clarity into every space I enter." The room was quiet. Then the panel nodded. They saw her. Not her past. Not her pain. Her strength. When success didn't look like revenge. She got the role. The promotion didn't feel like victory over anyone else. It felt like alignment. Like her life finally matched who she had become. She didn't announce it loudly. She didn't post about it. She simply went home, hugged her children, and cried quietly. Not tears of relief. Tears of recognition. The forgiveness she gave herself. One evening, while sorting old papers, she found her wedding photos. She expected anger. She expected sadness. What she felt instead surprised her. Compassion. For the woman she had been. The woman who stayed too long because she believed love meant sacrifice. The woman who didn't know her worth yet. "I forgive you," she whispered to the photo. And for the first time, she meant it. The moment of true freedom. Freedom didn't come when her life became perfect. It came when she stopped measuring herself by the past. She didn't need closure from him. She didn't need validation from anyone else. She had given it to herself. And that was enough. The woman she became. Amara was still gentle, still kind, still compassionate. But she was no longer fragile. She knew now that strength and softness could coexist. That boundaries didn't make her cold. That choosing herself didn't make her selfish. It made her whole. What she finally understood. She was never broken. She was becoming. Every loss shaped her. Every tear taught her. Every step forward proved her resilience. She hadn't refused to give up because she was fearless. She refused because something inside her knew she was meant for more. Some endings don't arrive with fireworks. They arrive quietly, with understanding, with peace, with the realization that the storm has passed, and somehow you are still standing. For Amara, that realization came on an ordinary evening as she watched her children laugh at the dinner table. Their laughter was lighter now. Their eyes no longer searched her face for fear. They were safe again. And so was she. When life comes full circle, months had passed. Life didn't become perfect. but it became honest. Amara had built routines that supported her instead of draining her. She protected her time. She chose her battles. She rested without guilt. She had become the kind of woman her children could lean on. Not because she carried everything alone, but because she showed them how to ask for help. Strength had become visible, not loud, but steady. The moment she shared her story, one afternoon, the support center invited her to speak. She hesitated. "I'm not special," she said. "I'm just surviving." The coordinator smiled gently. "That's exactly why they need to hear you." Standing in front of that room, Amara felt the old nerves rise. But she also felt something stronger. Purpose. She spoke honestly. About the night the lights went out. About the shame. About the fear. About the slow, quiet rebuilding. She didn't paint herself as a hero. She told the truth. And in the eyes looking back at her, she saw recognition. Hope. The ripple effect of resilience. Afterward, women approached her. Some cried. Some thanked her. Some just held her hand. "You made me feel less alone," one whispered. And in that moment, Amara understood something profound. Her pain had not been wasted. It had become a bridge. And the past no longer had power. Later that night, she walked home under the same streetlights she once walked beneath in exhaustion. But she felt different now. The memories were still there. They just didn't control her anymore. She could look at her past without flinching. She had survived it. The final realization. Amara once believed she was broken. She believed her life had fallen apart beyond repair. But broken things can be rebuilt. And some become stronger at the cracks. She wasn't unbreakable because nothing hurt her. She was unbreakable because she kept going anyway. The message she left behind. If you're listening to this story and you feel broken, if you're tired of holding everything together, if you're afraid that it's too late to start again, remember this. You don't need to see the whole path. You don't need permission. You don't need to be fearless. You just need to take the next step. Because you may not realize it yet, but you're becoming unbreakable. Subscribe for more videos. Thank you for watching.